Imagine throughout your whole childhood, everyone tells you you are the chosen one, that you were chosen to play basketball, a sport that came naturally to you and you could do no wrong in. And by your sophomore year, you'll have the biggest universities in the country trying to recruit you because of just how much better you were than everyone else at the sport. And then you go to university where you work hard for 3 years straight, and then finally you get drafted and get to the league. But you wouldn't be able to play immediately because you get sent down to the D League where you would outplay everyone there but still end up getting cut. Then you pick yourself up and go to Europe in hopes of returning to the league, and after more than a year of playing in Europe, you find yourself back in the D League, and this time you achieve your goal. You get the call up, you're heading to the big leagues, and then finally you get your chance. With 3.9 seconds left in the quarter, you get called up to get subbed in, and you do your thing, at least the most you can do on a basketball court in 3.9 seconds anyways. But regardless, you get subbed as the next quarter starts, and after that game, you get cut, never getting on the NBA court ever again, and earning the title of the shortest NBA career ever. That's the story of JameSon Curry, whose name might at first lead you to think he would be the next greatest basketball player ever, combining LeBron James with Steph Curry. And his story after his 3.9 seconds is tragic, and also something straight out of a sports movie. JameSon Curry was born in Pleasant Grove, North Carolina, and no, his name wasn't because of LeBron James, but rather was inspired by his dad and great uncle, whose names were Leon and James, and combine the two, you get the great name of JameSon. JameSon was a basketball prodigy playing point guard at 6'3", and by his sophomore year in high school, he would commit to one of the best college basketball teams in the country in University of North Carolina and become one of the best point guards in the state, even outplaying Chris Paul in the Hampton 5-star camp, where allegedly Curry taught Chris Paul the signature move he would use when he got to the NBA, the yo-yo dribble. By his senior year, he'll drop 40, 50-point games on the regular, averaging 40.2 points a game, and he would even break the record for all-time most points ever in North Carolina history, scoring 3,307 points in his high school career, which was more than even Michael Jordan has scored when he played in high school. He was such a big-time player that a newspaper would even send a photographer to go document his senior season, and a UNC fan would even travel to all his games so he could tell other UNC fans what they could expect from their recruit. One day though, things would change in an otherwise irregular day where the day before he dropped 47 points against his school rivals, and in this day he was sitting in art class when he would get called up into the principal's office where he would find sheriff's deputies, and at first Curry would think they just wanted his autograph, but instead they would place him in the handcuffs. There was a big drug sting that caught 60 students from the 6 different high schools in his district, and it had turned out that Curry had been caught selling marijuana to an undercover police officer who was pretending to be a student and had a hidden camera in the strap of a backpack, which recorded Curry selling him marijuana twice, which for this he would be charged with 6 felony counts of possessing marijuana and selling it on school grounds, and Curry would plead guilty to all of the charges. A judge would suspend his sentence and place him on probation for 36 months with 200 hours of community service, and on top of that he would be kicked off the basketball team and expelled, and University of North Carolina would rescind their scholarship. The craziest part of that was that Curry had earned only $95 from the 2 deals he had done, and for the $95 he would go through all this trouble when he was already on a trajectory to make it to the league. After this, he would have to attend an alternative school where he would graduate from, and after graduating he would commit to a new university, this time Oklahoma State, where in his first year he would start in half the games and average 9.4 points, and would even contribute to them winning the Big 12 and reach the Sweet 16. Although the team he was supposed to play in UNC would win the national championship that year. Regardless, JameSon Curry would continue to improve, and by his sophomore year he would start every game averaging 13.5 points, and he would even be better the next year, averaging 17.3 points, with his most impressive game of the season coming against the University of Texas with Kevin Durant, where he scored 28 points to lead them in a win in triple overtime. However, his incident from high school had earned him a reputation in university, and in every game he played he would hear chants of James on crack, which he would have to deal with throughout his college career. But by his junior year, his attention would be elsewhere because he would start to get attention from NBA teams, with the Chicago Bulls even promising him they would pick him. His head coach would recommend him to play one more year in university, but Curry would go against that advice and declare for the NBA draft after his junior year, and he'd be picked by the Chicago Bulls with the 51st pick. After he got picked, he would immediately get sent to the D League, and here he would play great, averaging 20 points a game, which would earn him a chance when he would get called up. but then he would get demoted again. And then another incident would happen with JameSon, because in the D-League showcase in January, he would be caught by a police officer urinating in an alley outside his hotel at 2:30 at night, and he would run and then be arrested, and he was cited for 2 misdemeanors. But even with this incident, he would be called up again a month later, where after joining the team, Chicago's coach Scott Skiles would tell the team that their next practice would be an open tryout. Curry was ready, and he would do his best and would dominate the scrimmage with his playmaking and scoring. And Curry thought with this performance, he would finally get his chance to get on the NBA court. But instead, the coach would pull him aside after practice and tell him, "You'll be the best player in the D-League." Not, "That's a great performance and for that you'll get your chance on the court," but instead, "You'll be the best player in the D-League." And after this season, Curry would be cut. Perhaps it was because of the incident at the D-League showcase and him missing a team flight to New York because he got lost in Chicago driving to the airport, and that combined with his reputation from before just reinforced the idea that he was a troubled player. Curry would then go on to sign with a team in France, but just 2 months after signing, he would be waived because he failed to impress the coaching staff, so he would rejoin Chicago's D-League team Iowa Energy, where he spent the rest of the year there. He would then join another European team in Cyprus, but then the D-League draft would happen and he would be picked with the 14th pick by Springfield Armor, and here he would average 16 points until in January, when the Clippers would give him a 10-day contract. Then 3 days later, in January 25, the Clippers would take on the Celtics, led by Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. And in the third quarter, Rondo would draw a foul with 3.9 seconds remaining in the quarter. Curry would be subbed in, and here he would be tasked with guarding Rondo. And here's the clip. Pierce swings to Allen, who drives into the paint, but Curry is there to guard him, and he can't get the shot off in time, and the quarter ends. And then Curry gets subbed out and wouldn't get subbed in again in this game. And that would be it for his NBA career, because the Clippers would waive him 12 hours after this game. He didn't even get to take a dribble, rebound, or even touch the ball, and just like that, he would get sent back into the D-League, where he would spend 2 more years in. And to his credit, he performed, and in his second season, he even made the D-League All-Star team and looked like one of the best players in the game in the All-Star game, as he would go on to score 25 points. But the long coveted call-up still wouldn't come. There were 3 other call-ups from their team that year, but JameSon Curry wasn't one of them. After that year, he would take another trip to Europe, this time playing in Italy, but just like last time, he would end up coming back to the D-League, where he would rejoin the Armor, and in the next year, he would get traded to Bakersfield Jam. Curry though would get into more trouble before his season with the Jam started, as he was arrested in Oklahoma for marijuana possession, to which he would plead guilty. But things would only go downhill from there, because in March, he would get injured in his ankle, which would end his year. The Jam would cut him as the season ended, and after this, JameSon Curry would move to Edmond, which is a suburb 15 miles north of Oklahoma City, to live with his girlfriend and 3 children. Here, he would train in hopes to get back to playing basketball at a high level, but again, he would face trouble. This time, he would be riding as a passenger near the campus of University of Central Oklahoma at 1 at night, and the officer would go through the car and find marijuana and a handgun, to which the officer would ask Curry what his name was, and Curry would reply with James Davis. And just like that, Curry was charged with 2 felony counts of possession of a controlled dangerous substance with intent to distribute within 2,000 feet of a school, and false impersonation. With the case ongoing, he would get into more trouble a couple months later, and this time he would be arrested for possession of Xanax. With JameSon Curry dealing with a bunch of cases that would drag on for many months, he would accept the deal and plead guilty to all charges, which he would now be required to serve 10 consecutive weekends in Oklahoma County Jail and complete 40 hours of community service. In the county jail, he would get into a fight with another inmate, which would cause a scar in his cheekbone. And after finishing his time in the county jail, he would decide to move back to North Carolina and continue chasing his basketball dreams here. After months of training to get back into the league, one night after a workout, he would drive down the highway in a pickup truck to head to Johnny Brewer's, which was the only open store outside of Pleasant Grove, to buy a cigar. And at a certain point, he would drop his phone, so he would reach down to grab it, but after picking up the phone, he would notice his wheel had turned and flipped, and the truck would crash into a ditch, which would cause the windows to be smashed, and now his ribs were dislocated, his back was broken, and he had blood pouring from his head. A man would notice the crash and would walk up to his truck, and Curry would crawl out of the truck to ask for help before losing consciousness, to which the man would drive him to the hospital. Curry would wake up in the emergency room with 2 steel rods implanted in his back, and with this surgery, he would need help going to the bathroom and wouldn't be able to walk for a month. 3 months after the crash, now with his hope for a comeback gone, Curry would move back to Oklahoma to be with his girlfriend and kids. At this point, Curry would be at his lowest with his injury. He wouldn't be able to play basketball at a high level anymore, and he wouldn't even be able to work at most normal jobs because of his felony convictions. And it got to a point where even Burger King wouldn't even hire him. He would sign up with a temp agency and work various jobs like at a dog food factory and at UPS as a driver's assistant. He would continue to play basketball though, and one day after playing pickup at a church rec center, he would decide to apply for a job as a trainer. But the rec center would run a background check on him, which would automatically disqualify him for the job. Working the temp jobs wouldn't be enough, and soon he would run low on money, so he would move to a cheaper area to live in called Enid, and here he would get a job working 12 hours a day 5 times a week, loading and driving trucks, thanks to the fact that his supervisor was a big Oklahoma State fan. After a couple of months working the job, his supervisor would ask Curry if he could fill in as a weekend coach for his kids team at the YMCA, which he would agree to. And his supervisor would ask him for another favor, to do one-on-one training with his kid, to which Curry replied with, "For 20 bucks, sure." Curry's new schedule would be to work the trucking job from 7 AM to 7 PM. Then at 7:15, he would be at the YMCA ready to train the kids. And soon enough, he would go from an interim coach to a full-time head coach of the youth team. He would also start doing one-on-one workouts for a couple more kids, and the parents would start noticing how much better the kids were doing after doing the private workouts. And with this word of mouth, he would add more kids to his workout, and soon enough, he would start coaching an additional team. 3 months of doing this and he would quit his job of trucking and focus full-time on coaching basketball, which is what he is doing to this day in a tiny town called Drummond, which in a survey of their 432 residents, 86.6% were white, with tiny percentages of Hispanics and American Indians with 0 African Americans. And here, Curry was a 6 or 7 time felon, a black guy with tattoos, was now a respected mentor and a coach in this town. If you check his Instagram, it's full of clips of him training kids with the occasional old head highlights, and it seems like he's in a much better place than he was in right after he had moved right back into Oklahoma when nobody wanted to give him a chance because he was a felon. I think the story of Curry can teach everybody a lesson in how life is unpredictable, because here's a guy who at one point was destined to become a star in the NBA, but then he would do stupid things which would damn near make him unemployable with no hope or chances. And now here he is making a living with the same exact sport that he quote unquote failed in. So to anyone out there feeling down, just know that life is unpredictable. So just keep working hard and one day things might change.